Hello and welcome to our on-location premiere show, the Marco Rubio book presentation. I'm Darrell Dukes. Now, throughout this next hour or so, you're going to see three things. Well, see two things and hear another thing to be exact. The first two things are you're going to see. You're going to see Marco Rubio being interviewed by CBS Face the Nation anchor Bob Schieffer on his potential run for the White House next year, that he still hasn't announced that he's going to run for 2016. And another thing you're going to see is Marco Rubio's press conference before his book presentation at the Miami-Dade Wolfson campus in downtown Miami. You're going to see that in its entirety. After the presser that you're going to see in its entirety, you're going to listen to the book presentation. Now, there's a couple key things that you need to know, just in case if you haven't heard of Senator Marco Rubio. Here are a few facts. 1. He was born in Miami, Florida. 2. He attended both the University of Miami and the University of Florida, where at he earned his law degree, and at the University of Florida he earned his bachelor's in arts and political science. Now, while at the law school at University of Miami, he interned on the United States Representative Ileana Ros-Layton. Now, in his new book that the St. Petersburg Times and the Washington Post pointed out that they both reported, the St. Petersburg Times and the Washington Post both reported that Rubio's previous comment about Cuba was incorrect, referring to the time frame where this honorable senator's parents left Cuba for the United States. That apparently there was a 3-year gap between Marco Rubio's story and the fact that both the St. Petersburg Times and the Washington Post both reported. Now, this is what's going to happen right now on location. You're going to see the interview that Bob Schieffer did with Senator Rubio on his show, Face the Nation. After that, you're going to see Senator Rubio's press conference from the Miami-Dade Wolfson campus in downtown Miami in its entirety, unedited, as it were. Then, after that, you're going to listen in its entirety, as it were, the book presentation for Marco Rubio's American Dreams book. Now, just to let you know, if you hear some stoppage or yelling or screaming in the audio presentation of Senator Rubio's book, it's because in the span between 7:10 and 7:20, five people were escorted out of the building due to the fact that they was heckling the honorable senator from Florida. Now, in the end, I'm going to come back and wrap things up for you. So, right now we're going to toss it over to the clip of Bob Schieffer interviewing Senator Rubio on Face the Nation. Afterwards, you're going to see the senator's press conference in its entirety. In addition to, after the video of the Senator Rubio's press conference, you're going to listen in its entirety the book presentation as it happened this past Friday night in downtown Miami at the Miami-Dade College Wolfson campus. In the end of that, I'm going to come back and I'm going to wrap things up for you. So please enjoy this presentation, and you're watching on location on YouTube and on the News Now Nation.
Well, you're out this week talking about your new book, which is what prospective candidates often do when they're getting ready to run for president. What do you think is going to be the overriding issue in the next presidential election if you decide to run?
I think there are two major issues. The first, of course, deals with the #1 priority of the United States federal government, and that is our national security. At a time when we're facing threats from rising powers like China that want to rewrite the global order, like Russia that wants to ignore the global order, like rogue states like Iran and North Korea that want nuclear weapons to be immune from the global order, and radical Islamists that want to have a brand new global order in which everyone lives under the flag of radical Islam. That's the first threat we face, and we need a commander-in-chief that understands the nature of the threat and has real ideas about how to address it. And the second thing is, we have had a radical transformation of our economy. This 21st century economy looks dramatically different like the 20th century, dramatically different than the 20th century. We need new, modern policies to give everyone an equal opportunity to succeed. And I believe the next president of the United States needs to be someone that understands the 21st century and has ideas about how to take advantage of the opportunities of this new century so everyone can make it to the middle class and beyond.
CBS News has a new poll out this week. We ask respondents, Republicans and Democrats, we ask those in each party who they'd like to see run for president. Mitt Romney tops the list. 59% of Republicans say he should run. He is followed closely by Jeb Bush, and then along come others. We're going to just roll down the list here. You're kind of in the middle of the pack. One of the things the poll says that more than half the people say they just need to know more about you.
Yeah.
How do you fix that? And but let me ask you first, are you surprised that Romney's at the top of this list?
No. Look, first of all, polls like this at this stage in an election are really just nothing but a reflection of name recognition. So it doesn't surprise me as you look at that poll that people that have run for president or have family members as president or are doing well in a poll like that. But the bigger point is the one you raised. Look, preseason polls in college football don't mean anything anymore. Who cares if you're ranked #1 in the preseason polls? What matters is who wins that final championship game now that they have a playoff system. And that's going to be the same here when it comes to running for president. If I decide to run for president, and I'm very seriously thinking about it because of where our country is today, I'm going to go out and run a campaign where I'm going to explain to people, not only do I understand the national security threats that we face, but that I believe that we need to turn the page and fully embrace all the opportunities and confront the challenges of a new century. And I believe that once we do that, a growing number of people will become convinced, if I run, that we should be the person that they nominate. But I haven't made that decision yet, but no matter what, that's who our nominee needs to be, someone who understands the 21st century and has ideas relevant to this new era in our history.
I'll just go to questions because I'm going to speak in a few minutes and you can grab it.
Senator, can you talk about the different perspectives you think that senators versus governors bring to foreign policy?
Well, I mean, obviously, governors don't deal with foreign policy in their jobs right now. They can certainly learn a lot about it and become a person. Most of the people thinking about running for president, all of the governors thinking about running for president are experienced, intelligent people who could, as they prepare for their candidacy, become quickly conversant on many of these issues. So it's just a question of the amount of time you're willing to put into it.
Can you say now reports that top Senate Republicans would rather you stay in the Senate to protect the majority?
Yeah, I mean, I saw that story today. It's just really, I mean, that may be how they feel, but in terms of pressure and so forth, it's just not accurate. I don't think I've had a single member of the Senate pressure me to do anything. I certainly think they're curious about what I'm going to do, and I'm making plans. And as I've assured them, if I decide to run for president, I think the Republican Party in Florida has a deep bench of very qualified individuals that would make great candidates.
Senador, el sueño americano, como bien lo dice su libro, tiene mucho que ver con la inmigración y los inmigrantes que llegaron a este país. ¿Cree usted que su postura con la inmigración podría alejarlo de la base conservadora de votantes que podría tener?
No, yo creo que la enorme mayoría de los votantes norteamericanos entienden que hay que hacer algo con el sistema migratorio que no funciona bien y que tenemos 12 millones de seres humanos en este país que están aquí legalmente, pero al final del día hay que lidiar con esa realidad. Yo creo que el problema es que hasta que no se haga algo con la seguridad, que las personas sepan que en el futuro no va a haber inmigración ilegal como la que hay en este momento, va a ser muy difícil lidiar con ese tema. Por eso que yo he propuesto los 3 pasos para llegar a esa solución. Lo que no creo que es posible es una ley integral que lo haga todo de una vez, porque lo tratamos de hacer ya el año pasado, lo tratamos de hacer 3 veces en los últimos 10 años y las 3 veces han sido derrotados. The question was about immigration and whether it create a problem with being with a conservative base. I would just say that the vast majority of Americans understand that we have a broken immigration system and a very serious illegal immigration problem that needs to be addressed. And I think the vast majority of Americans of all political persuasions are prepared to do something responsible and reasonable with those who have been in this country illegally for a long period of time and have not otherwise violated our laws. What I think we've learned is that it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to do anything about it until first we prove that illegal immigration can be brought under control. I think if we do that, we can make great progress on the other remaining issues, such as modernizing our legal immigration system, and of course dealing with those that are in this country illegally.
Senator, you said earlier this week that you don't think a clean funding bill for Homeland Security would pass, and then your office said that doesn't mean you think that Senate Republicans should be pushing for a clean funding bill, even though you don't think it would pass otherwise. How do you square that with your immigration position, that because a comprehensive bill wouldn't pass, then you shouldn't pursue it, but in this case you think, well, it won't pass, but we should pursue it?
Well, in this case, we could pass it if it wasn't for Democrats filibustering. If it wasn't for Democrats who campaigned saying they opposed the president's executive order, now hiding, it would pass. So right now, the thing, we can't even get on the bill to debate it. I think that's what needs to be reported, is that Democrats are filibustering and won't even allow us to go on the bill and have a debate on it. What the president did isn't just counterproductive. In my opinion, it's unconstitutional. He himself, on 22 separate occasions, told us that he didn't have the authority to do it. As far as I know, over the last 2 years, the Constitution hasn't changed, so I'm not sure where he found suddenly the constitutional power to do this. I suspect that the legal challenges that it faces could very well result in it being thrown out. But I believe the solution to this problem is for the Democrats to lift their filibuster, and let's have some votes on it, and let's fund Homeland Security, but let's deauthorize this executive order and work on the sort of three-step process that I've outlined in my book and that I talked about extensively. It really is the only permanent solution to this problem.
And how can you help Marco Rubio, the Republican Party, to regain popularity among the Hispanic community?
Well, our goal is to help the Republican Party represent the American people, no matter where they come from, or because we share a common aspiration, and that is the desire for a better life, and that's what the book is about. One of the reasons why I wanted to write this book is to describe one of the things that I think that makes America so special is that upward mobility, and how it's eroding for millions of people. Now, there's a very large number of Americans of Hispanic descent that are facing real challenges, not just in their daily lives, but doubts about whether their children are going to have the opportunity at a better life, which is the purpose of their lives, is to open those doors.
And
Senator,
is it a key for the
please.
victory? Is it a key for the presidential victory, having the Hispanic community with you, with your party?
Well, certainly it's an important voting bloc in states like Florida. But again, I always caution people that most people don't vote on their ethnic identity. They vote on their hopes and their dreams, and on whether the candidates who are running understand what they're going through and have ideas about how to address it.
Can we have a brief description like that in Spanish for our audience?
Sobre el voto hispano.
Yeah.
El voto hispano es un voto importante, obviamente, pero creo que la mayoría de las personas en este país votan no por su raza o por su punto de origen, sino votan basado en sus esperanzas y sus sueños para su familia. Y premian esos candidatos que entienden lo que están viviendo esas personas y tienen un plan concreto para ayudarlos.
Your relation?
How actively are you considering running for president in 2018?
I'm not thought about it at all, other than when you guys asked me.
Usted cuando pequeño decía que en algún momento hubiera querido gobernar Cuba para derribar la dictadura de Fidel Castro. En ese contexto, años después,
¿Cómo es? ¿Cómo es, perdón?
usted decía cuando pequeño que quería ser presidente de Cuba en algún momento y derrotar la dictadura de
Tenía 9 años.
En ese contexto, ahora, ¿cómo valora usted la política de flexibilización de la administración Obama para Cuba? Y también si pudiera hacer una pequeña referencia en español del texto que va a presentar ahora para que los medios en español pudiéramos tener un...
Bueno, la esperanza mía para el pueblo cubano es que tengan lo que han tenido todos los pueblos de América Latina durante las últimas 2 décadas, y es elecciones libres. Cuba es el único país en los últimos 15 años que no ha tenido una elección libre y democrática, y creo que se merecen por lo menos eso. Desafortunadamente pienso que la política del presidente nuevo, esta nueva política, va a atrasar esa esperanza, porque al final del día le está entregando premios al gobierno castrista que en cambio no está dando nada sobre el paso hacia la democracia, desafortunadamente. Esta misma semana vimos un grupo de congresistas visitar a Cuba, por la congresista Pelosi fue lo que los trajo, y para poder entrar al país tuvieron que acordar con el gobierno cubano no visitar los disidentes y la resistencia democrática. En mi opinión, eso realmente viola la moral de este país, de siempre apoyar a esas personas que desean la libertad. Y agrego que se quedaron en un hotel que fue confiscado, no una vez, pero 2 veces. Primero de los dueños originales y después de los inversionistas que mejoraron ese hotel. Así que realmente creo que esa visita trae luz sobre la hipocresía de este régimen en Cuba.
Senador, Estados Unidos hoy anunció que envían un delegado al proceso de paz entre Colombia y la guerrilla de las FARC. ¿Qué opina acerca de este delegado y sobre el proceso?
Bueno, no sé quién es el delegado. Obviamente nosotros deseamos la paz para Colombia, es para nosotros uno de los aliados más importantes que tenemos en el hemisferio. Siempre he tenido una inquietud, ¿no?, sobre si el arreglo que están haciendo con esta guerrilla van a realmente llegar a esa paz. Estos son grupos narcotraficantes, son grupos que controlan territorios, que secuestran, asesinan y que ahora quieren esconderse detrás de un disfraz político, como si los crímenes que han cometido son crímenes políticos. Para nosotros, que hemos invertido junto con los colombianos, que han invertido mucho más de dinero y sangre en esta batalla contra los terroristas dentro de Colombia, le deseamos todo lo mejor, pero tampoco, y espero que podamos contribuir algo positivo a ese diálogo, pero al final del día le corresponde al pueblo de Colombia decidir su propio futuro.
Last question, please. Last question.
The last two answers, yeah. Do you want me to repeat the question just so you guys know what they were? On the issue of Cuba, look, my desire for the Cuban people is nothing more than for them to have the same thing that every people in the Western Hemisphere has had at least once in the last 15 years, except for Cuba, and that's freedom and democracy. And unfortunately, I believe the president's new policy will impede that, will make it harder to achieve it. It's given them all sorts of rewards to the Cuban regime in exchange for no concrete steps towards democracy, now or in the immediate future. And I think it's best exposed by the recent visit of Congresswoman Pelosi and a group of Congress people. They were only allowed into the country if they agreed not to meet with dissidents or democracy activists on the island. In fact, the Cuban government's been denying visas until people agree to not meet with dissidents or democracy activists. Now, what made it worse is she stayed at a hotel that's been confiscated not once, but twice. First from its original owners and then from follow-up and foreign investors who tried to improve the hotel and then had it taken from them by the Cuban government again. So, again, I think the policy, I believe that there are people in this community who legitimately want freedom for Cuba and believe that some sort of economic opening could trigger that. But I think everything we know about the Cuban regime shows that it's not true.
Last question, please. Last question.
De los Andes y Canal 13 de Argentina. Quería preguntarle cuál es su evaluación de la marcha de los fiscales que se hizo el miércoles y también qué opina de la carta que le envió el gobierno argentino al gobierno de Estados Unidos y de Israel pidiendo que el cuerpo diplomático de Estados Unidos no interfiera en la causa Nisman.
Bueno, primero yo admiro mucho al señor Nisman, que perdió su vida. Creo que es importante entender exactamente qué fue lo que pasó y eso se merece una investigación completa. También se merece entender bien cuál fue el papel de Irán. Yo estoy convencido que fueron los partícipes los que patrocinaron ese ataque, ese acto de terrorismo que ocurrió en Argentina hace muchísimos años. Y creo que es importante que ahora el gobierno argentino coopere todo lo posible para poder implicar a Irán y dar evidencia del papel que jugó Irán en nuestro propio hemisferio y llevó a ese ataque terrorista tan horrible. En términos de la marcha, pues yo creo que son personas que estaban apoyando a la labor que hizo el señor Nisman y nosotros nos unimos a ese sentimiento.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. He's got to get started, guys.
No, he asked me over the book, yeah. Pues mire, yo quería escribir este libro llamado Sueños Americanos y realmente lo que hace es habla sobre la realidad que existe en este momento en este país, de millones y millones de personas que están trabajando, que pagan sus impuestos, que se dedican a su familia y a su labor, pero que encuentran que lo que están recibiendo en sueldo no es suficiente para el costo de vida que sigue subiendo. Entonces lo que hacemos, hablamos sobre varias personas que nosotros hemos conocido a través de los últimos 4 años. Hablamos de los retos que enfrentan y también hablamos de lo que podemos hacer para ayudarlos, para darle a todas las personas en este país la habilidad de vivir sus sueños y mejorar su vida. Que al final del día no solamente el sueño americano, sino es lo que distingue a este país como un país excepcional en la historia del mundo.
Thank you, everyone.
On behalf of our president, Dr. Eduardo Padron, welcome to your college, Democracy's College, Miami-Dade College, for the special event and conversation with Senator Marco Rubio. Once again, a couple of housekeeping items. Please make sure your cell phones are set on the silent position. Once the senator finishes his remarks, the signing will take place to my left. And again, we please ask for no personalization this evening. It's been a long road. I know folks want to get home to their families, so we truly appreciate your cooperation. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce another great leader in this community. He's a member of the District Board of Trustees of Miami-Dade College, the founder and the president of Benworth Capital, Mr. Bernie Navarro, who will introduce the senator. Mr. Navarro.
My name is Bernie Navarro. As Juan just mentioned, the voice of Miami-Dade College. I serve on the Board of Trustees, and I'm also president and founder of Benworth Capital Partners. Tonight it's kind of easy for me. I have the great honor and privilege of introducing a friend, Senator Marco Rubio, a true partner in restoring opportunity for all. And a young, and I use the word young because I put myself in that same bucket, public servant who won an impressive victory in 2009 U.S. Senate campaign. He is not only Miami's son, but he's also America's son, and we're all proud of him for that. But before I do that, I would like to recognize my colleagues, Chairwoman Ferre, Trustee Gancio, Trustee Fuentes, and the campus president of wolfson campus, Dr. Vicente. Where's Dr. Vicente? Yes. Another person I would like to recognize is our esteemed president, Dr. Padron, who has done a magnificent job of guiding this institution, which is a beacon of hope. MDC is where opportunity starts for so many in our community. My story, our story, is Senator Rubio's story. He is a son of immigrants who stopped living their dreams so he could seek his. As such, he was raised to believe that in this country, anyone can become successful if he or she works hard. For me and my generation, he represents a new style of leadership that preserves conservative values and ideals. During his political journey, however, Senator Rubio discovered that unfortunately that pursuit of happiness is out of reach for many. In his latest book, American Dreams, Restoring Economic Opportunity for Everyone, Senator Rubio details how he believes he can best advance our country, the greatest country of all, by making the American dream attainable. His book highlights his modest roots and humble upbringing and outlines policy prescriptions on a variety of subjects, including the need to tackle modern issues such as today's global economy and the obstacles families face every day. Senator Rubio, who took classes right here at NBC, makes us all Miami-Dade College, here at Miami-Dade College, very proud. He has nobly served the people of Florida for more than a decade and represents the college and our community at the highest level. If you have not done so, please buy his book. If you have, buy many more because they serve as great gifts. The Rubio family will be forever in your debt. So now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to my friend, mi hermano, Senator Rubio.
I'm very proud to be here to an institution. I said this a week ago at an event we did here with small businesses. I don't know of any other institution in America that's opened the doors to more American dreams than Miami-Dade College has. And it's a true treasure for our community, and Dr. Padron's leadership is a true treasure as well. And we thank you for your service to our community and ultimately to our country. So thank you for being here today. I want to spend a few moments talking to you about the book. The title of the book is American Dreams. The American dream has nothing to do with how much money you make. The American dream isn't really about getting rich, although that may be your dream, and a lot of Americans would dream that. The American dream is about achieving happiness, as you define it. And for most people, the American dream and happiness is about simple things, like owning a home in a safe and stable neighborhood, being able to raise your family in a safe and stable environment, having a job that you find both rewarding, but also that pays you enough to be able to enjoy the things you like, save for retirement, and be able to leave your children better off than yourself. Of all the communities that I've spoken about the American dream in many places, there's few, if any, where I have to spend less time describing that dream than ours. Because both in this audience and in our community, there are hundreds of thousands, in fact, millions of people in South Florida, throughout the 3 counties, who have lived that dream, despite starting from very difficult backgrounds and circumstances. I want you to imagine for a moment being born into a society where your future was determined by who your parents were.
Imagine growing up in a society where you only got to do whatever it is your parents did before you. If your parents were rich, if your parents were connected, if they had influence, then you got to move ahead. But if you didn't, if you came from parents that were poor or disconnected from power, then no matter how hard you worked, or how much you tried, or how much talent you had, you would not be allowed to succeed. Imagine living in a place like that.
Yeah, I live in a place like this right now.
Thank you.
Am I affordable?
Let me finish my description of the book. And so the book talks about that dream that millions of people in this country have. I think I'm the only one that gets heckled by both sides of the immigration debate. It's pretty amazing.
Senator Rubio, what made your parents move there in the mine documentary?
All right.
Why did mine want to be deported?
Well, we're going to wait for them to finish, and then we'll continue talking about the book. We're just going to wait for them to finish, and then we'll talk about the book. I apologize for that. That's all right. Let it, don't be gone in a second. I just hope they bought the book. All right. If what they wanted was a discount on the book, we could have worked it out. The American dream. So think about for a moment living in a country like that. In a place where no matter how hard you work or how much you try, you can't get ahead. That has been the rule, not the exception throughout human history. Most people have grown up in societies like that. What's made us different is that here people can achieve anything if they work hard and play by the rules. That's been the rule for 230 some odd years.
Senator Rubio, my parents worked hard to play by the rules. You're denying them the same opportunity with the actions that you take. You're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite, and you stuff your mouth and your books with hypocrisy, and nothing but that.
Doctor, I apologize that we can't get through our... We'll wait a few minutes until... so we can continue to talk about the important topics in this book. So the question now is, what is happening today with the fact that millions of people in America... Look, I promise you we'll get through this. Millions of people in America now feel like that's no longer possible for them. And what's frustrating to people is they open the newspaper or they watch on the news and it says that the economy is getting better. Wall Street's having record years, companies are making record profits, the wealthiest Americans are better off today than they've ever been. But they're wondering, when is that prosperity going to reach them? And there's reasons why this is happening, and that's why one of the cores of our book. One of the main reasons why that is happening is because the very nature of our economy has rapidly transformed. The very nature of our economy has rapidly transformed. For example, 25 years ago, if you were willing to work hard, there would always be a job available in America that allowed you to achieve happiness. Maybe not a job that made you rich or a job that made you famous, but a job that allowed you to do the things we talked about. Buy a home, raise your family, leave them better off. But today, people are finding more and more that what they're getting paid doesn't keep up with the cost of living, which continues to grow. The reason is not because of some temporary cyclical downturn. The reason is not because our economy is going through a tough time and it's going to get better again. The reason is because our economy is undergoing deep, rapid, permanent, structural changes in the very outline of the economy. Globalization is real. Globalization has changed the nature of our economy. It means we're now competing with more nations than ever before. For jobs, for investment, for creativity, for innovation. That means we have to be more globally competitive than we've ever been. The nature of work has changed as well. Look, if my parents had come here in 2006 instead of 1956, it would have been very difficult for them to achieve what they achieved working as a bartender and as a maid. Because those jobs don't pay enough anymore compared, in most places, to what the cost of living has become. There are jobs in the 21st century that pay more, but they require a higher level of skill.
than ever before. And the problems that we have are twofold. One, our policies haven't adjusted to this new century. And two, increasingly we're led by people at every level of government that don't understand that we're living through the fastest, most rapidly evolving economic times in all of human history. We are basically having the equivalent of the Industrial Revolution every 3 to 5 years. So what are the answers to that problem? And that's what we outline in the book. First is we describe the stories of real people. Of a single mom who's struggling to raise her daughters while making $9 or $10 an hour. Of not one but 2 college students from this community who graduated with degrees and now cannot find jobs. And what's worse, they owe a bunch of money in student loans. Of a small business in Central Florida run by a couple that is struggling to stay ahead and compete in an increasingly complicated environment where big companies who can hire a bunch of lawyers and lobbyists can comply with rules and regulations. But small businesses like them struggle to do that. And about a young lady named India that we met through a great program called Take Stock in Children, who overcame some extraordinary obstacles in her life to achieve some truly extraordinary things. We also talk about poverty, the fact that there are tens of millions of Americans today living in poverty, and why our programs to deal with poverty don't work. Because our programs to deal with poverty today often alleviate the pain of poverty, but they do nothing to cure it. And the ultimate cure for poverty, the real cure for poverty, is a good paying job. And too many of our programs don't address that. They simply alleviate the pain of poverty. What are the steps that we need to take to address these things? The first is pretty straightforward. We need to become globally competitive again. We have to understand that we're not the only economy in the world anymore. That there are now dozens and dozens of countries that are competing against us for investment and for innovation. And that's why we need things like a simpler tax code. Why we need to reduce regulations, why we need to deal with our national debt, why we need to take advantage in a reasonable way, but in a responsible way, of our energy resources. And the second thing we talk about is that even if you grow the economy, and there's where I fault my party, and I've talked about this, sometimes the Republican Party simply stops at economic growth. It says if we just grow our economy, everyone's going to be better off. And theoretically, that's true. But in the 21st century, there's a second step that's more important than ever. Even if you grow your economy, even if you're prepared to create millions of better paying jobs, those better paying jobs today all require more skill and more education than it's ever required. The problem is that we still have a 20th century higher education system that tells everyone, and the only answer to that is a 4-year degree. And let me tell you, 4-year degrees will always be a part of one of our choices. It will always be a legitimate choice. But we need to have alternatives to that as well. For example, some of the best paying jobs of the 21st century require more than a traditional high school, but less than 4 years of traditional college. Welders and plumbers and electricians and airplane mechanics and BMW technicians. These are also good paying jobs that are in demand in the 21st century. And we need to have systems that allow people to acquire those skills. In particular, I believe that the high schools in America should be graduating more students ready to work right away in many of these professions, which are good paying jobs that are critical to 21st century success. Perhaps the most challenging area for us to face is, what do you do if you're 30 years old, you have to work full time to provide for yourself, and you're trying to raise 2 or 3 children on your own? You're making $9 an hour as a home health aide, or $12 an hour as a receptionist. The only way you are ever going to improve how much you make, and ultimately your life, is to acquire skills that allow you to become a paralegal or to become a dental hygienist. The problem is that in order to achieve those skills, oftentimes, depending on where you live, that requires you to drop everything and go to school for 2 years. And most people facing these circumstances just can't do that. And so what we need are innovative and creative new programs that allow people who have to work full-time and are raising families to also be able to go back to school at their pace, online, at night, on weekends. Now, I will admit that there are some for-profit programs that do a great job out there who are trying to address these needs. But they're also incredibly expensive. And as a result, we've seen people pursuing those programs graduating sometimes with tens of thousands of dollars in student loans. In that realm, it's a good point to stop and congratulate Miami-Dade County for the work it does. Miami-Dade Community College, Miami-Dade College, not community college anymore, Miami-Dade College
for the work it's doing to fill that gap in our community. We need more of that. We need to invest in more of that. Because the truth is, the only way that that receptionist who's making $9 an hour is ever going to make $50,000 a year is if he or she can become that paralegal or that dental hygienist or some other profession like it. But we need to acquire education systems that allow them the access to that. Last but not least, I would say to you that indeed the four-year college route, as I said a moment ago, will continue to be a legitimate way forward. But we cannot afford to continue to graduate people with degrees that do not lead to jobs. We can't afford it as a country. And one of the things we propose is that before anyone takes out a loan for a degree, before everyone can take out a loan for a degree, you should be told by that school, this is how much you can expect to make when you graduate from this school with that degree. Look, I myself graduated with over $100,000 in student loans, which I was only able to pay off after the publication of my first book, An American Son, which is now available on paperback, in case you're interested. So it's something that I hold deeply personal and important. We cannot continue to graduate people in this country with degrees that do not lead to jobs. We have over $1 trillion of student loan debt in America, much of which may never be paid off. And it isn't just bad for our country not to pay it off. It's bad for the people that can't pay it off. Student loan debt stays with you forever. It can't be discharged in bankruptcy. It locks you out of entrepreneurship. It locks you out of home ownership. It ruins your credit. So we have to have alternatives as well. And in that space, I talk about creating alternative ways to credential people, including the ability to package learning no matter where you acquire it from. The ability to come forward and say, here's who I am. I've worked for 10 years in the private sector, and these are the things that I've done. I've studied these 3 or 4 things online or on my own. I've taken these courses in this college and these courses in that college. I served in the military. Whatever it may be, someone should be able to package all of that experience and learning into the equivalent of a degree that the private sector recognizes. And by the way, I also outline an alternative to the traditional student loan that I think will be especially beneficial to graduate students, called the Student Investment Plan, which allows private sector investors to pay your college costs in exchange for a percentage of your income over a period of time, almost like an investment fund would in a company. It's not for everyone, but it's one more alternative to the traditional student loan. I would also be remiss if I didn't point out one more aspect of our book, and that's the impact of societal breakdown. The breakdown of families, and this has been documented in both the left and the right, is one of the single largest contributors of poverty in America today. Now that doesn't mean that I can pass a law to make someone a better husband or a better wife. Believe me, if I could pass a law to make people a better husband, my wife would run for office. But it does mean that we need to recognize it. And we need to recognize it in 2 ways. First, we need to recognize as elected officials, as policymakers, that stable, intact families are good for people. And we also need to recognize that children that are growing up in disadvantaged backgrounds, with broken families, in dangerous neighborhoods, in substandard and substandard housing, with no access to a quality education, those children are going to struggle to succeed, statistically speaking, unless we do something to intervene, unless we do something to break that cycle, unless we do something that allows them to overcome these things. And in that realm, there's a lot government can do. But ultimately, it's on us as people, as members of a community, as neighbors, as husbands and wives, as fathers and mothers, and as members of community groups. Tied all together, the general theme of the book is quite optimistic. Because while we face real challenges, I remind you, and I ask you, what nation would you trade places with? What country in the world would you rather be than us right now? Every nation on earth faces challenges. Every nation and every time in our history, we face challenges too. But I believe we have it within us to confront these challenges and solve them. And I believe that everything that it takes to succeed in the 21st century are things that we're better at than anyone else in the world. The 21st century will be about productivity. And the American worker is still the most productive worker on the planet. The 21st century will be about innovation. And the American people are the most innovative people on the planet. And most of all, the 21st century will also be about big aspirations and big dreams. And the American people still have those too. I honestly believe that if we confront the challenges and embrace the opportunities of this new era, the 21st century will also be an American century. I honestly believe that not only will we save the American dream, but we will allow it to reach more people than it's ever reached before.
And for me, that's a deeply personal principle. It's one that I hold very dear to my heart. I tell people all the time what's compelled me to enter public service is the reality that America doesn't owe me a single thing. I have a debt to this country that no matter how long I live or how hard I work, I will never be able to repay. I've been able to achieve things in my life and live a life that would have been impossible had my parents not come here, had this nation not existed, had America not been exceptional. And what we want now is not just for that to continue, but to reach more people than ever before. As I said at the outset, every country in the world has successful people. There have been other countries that have large militaries and big geopolitical importance. There are other nations with large economies and big companies. I truly believe that what separates us, not just from the other nations on the earth, but other nations in history, is that here we have been united by the belief that every human being deserves the chance to achieve their God-given potential, to go as far as their talent and their work will take them. And if we ever were to lose that, we will lose what makes us different. We'll still be big, we'll still be important, we'll still be powerful, we'll still be important, we'll still matter on the global stage, but we won't be as special. And I, for one, don't want to be part of the first generation of Americans that leaves the next worse off. I, for one, don't want to be part of the first generation of Americans that has to turn to their children and explain to them why we got to grow up in the greatest country in human history. But they will not have the same chance. Now, I know that there's a lot of narrative out there about how divided the Republican Party, about how divided we are between Republicans and Democrats, how divided we are among our political feelings and ideas. And it's true, we've always been a pretty opinionated people, as evidenced here tonight. That's the benefit of our freedom. But I believe that what unites us is even more important. No matter what your voter registration card says or who you voted for in the last election, I do believe there's a unifying principle in America. And it's the idea that every single human being should matter. That everyone deserves the right to achieve the dreams they have for themselves and for their families. And that we will continue to endeavor to be the country that provides that to people as the task of our time. And if we achieve it, not only will this be the greatest era in American history, but the 21st century will also be an American century. And so that's why I took the time to write this book. I tell it through the story of real people and their real challenges. I describe what's gone wrong in their life, what we're doing about it now, and what we can do better. You'll notice in the book that there are many ideas that are bipartisan. They involve my collaboration with people of another party. Colleagues like Chris Coons in Connecticut and Cory Booker in New Jersey. Many of our policy proposals really aren't partisan at all, particularly when it comes to higher education. You'll read about how I'm working with Mark Warner to make higher education more affordable. How I'm working with Cory Booker of New Jersey to provide more access to Wi-Fi and internet platforms, especially in disadvantaged neighborhoods. These are important initiatives as well. They're not easy to put on a bumper sticker. They don't win a lot of elections for you, but they're critical to the future of our country. So we still have time and space, and we should debate the issues we disagree on. But I hope that we can come together and cooperate on the essential issues of our time. Because what we have before us is an extraordinary opportunity. And that is to usher in the most prosperous era in all of our history. And that's saying a lot for a country with a history like ours. So I appreciate you all being here tonight. I look forward to talking to you in person more. And thank you for this opportunity you've given me to address the book. Thank you.
Well, that's it, folks. As promised, you got to see the Marco Rubio press conference in its entirety, in addition to listening Marco Rubio's book presentation in its entirety as well. And just in case, if you got a little confused or joined the program in the later parts, around between 7:10, and 7:20, 5 people were escorted out of the building due to the fact that they was heckling the honorable senator from Florida. And on a personal note, this is the second time that this journalist has seen a political figure of anything lower than the White House, of course. The first political figure I seen was one of the Diaz-Lamont brothers back in 2007 when This reporter was in a group home at Florida Baptist Children's Home, which is located here in the Kendall area of Miami. And it was amazing for me that I got to meet a senator, which Mr. Rubio was the second senator I ever seen in my life that was still in office. So on that note, thank you for watching this premiere edition of On Location, and we hope to inspire you with the above presentation that you've just witnessed. And On Location will be shown periodically, which you can find full-length shows on our YouTube page. For this edition of On Location, I'm Darrell Dukes, and until we meet again, friends, stay gold and good day. Goodbye for now.